faux finishing was meant to replicate materials initially. It's a form of decorative painting. So decorative painting can also include any artistic finish on a wall, and it can be applied into specific areas such as the ceiling, an art niche, an accent wall, just to give it that art background, art effect. That's decorative painting. Faux finishing, which replicates, for example, this background is an old worn paint finish. It's a faux painted finish of old worn wood. That's a decorative painting technique. So the difference is that faux, meaning false in French, is meant to imply another material. It's meant to look like something else. And decorative painting doesn't necessarily have to look like something else. It can just be decorative, such as this finish, which is a product with glass beads in it. And when applied in this fashion, vertically, it goes really well in a bathroom because of its water nature, very similar to a waterfall. If you check out the Wynn Interiors design booth in the main showroom, there's several of these finishes that I did on the walls in there, so you can see how something decorative looks in a large space. There's actually a bathroom and an office and an outdoor area and a kitchen that all these finishes go with. So very decorative and artistic, but they can go in a certain style of home, whether it's contemporary or modern, for something like this. For more traditional or rustic Tuscan, that's a really popular theme in people's homes. Decorative styles or design styles. If you have an affinity to Old World Italy, and for people who travel often, that's really something that they're connected with. And a lot of my clients ask for something that reminds them of a special place in Italy or a special place in Europe or France that they just have a warm feeling and memory from. A lot of their furnishings or the structure and architecture of their home falls into that category too, most often, where you'll find in Italy the old stone walls with just the random stacked stone and the old falling off plaster. That can actually be a faux finish in people's homes as well. And usually as long as it fits with their furnishing and the style of the architecture is when it's appropriate. This is now, today, by today's standards, the most common faux finish. And what it is just a simple one-color glaze over a base color. And glaze doesn't necessarily mean like you're glazing a turkey and it's going to look shiny, which a lot of my customers are worried about. It's just a transparent color that is laid over a second color. And in this case, it's very soft. It just adds depth to the paint. So when you're painting your house and you're adding color, that's a wonderful thing, because color affects your emotions. It adds warmth to the whole atmosphere. But when you add depth, then you add a theme. So it increases the attempt at your embracing that atmosphere of an old world finish or an old wall. This is actually a faux finish of how a wall would stain and age over time. Just one color. So again, decorative finishes like this one. This one uses a glaze, but I've manipulated it differently with a different technique. And if I change the colors in this, it can look like an old piece of wood. Very similar to this, which was done with paint. So if you want to go check out the interior design booth and see a lot of these finishes in a room, that'll help you wrap your head around how that would look in place. Because the furnishings do play a big part in there. If you were just to look at this board and you think orange, how does that fit into my home? But when you see it applied with stone and other furnishings that work with it, it does all come together. So that's what, when I work with a customer, I look at their whole home, their whole interior, and assess what style you're going for and what colors are going to work together. The same thing applies to a mural painting in a lot of senses, because this is an old world scene of Old World Italy. So the painting and the colors are sort of old and faded away. They're not really vibrant, and in most cases when I'm applying a mural so that it fits into the home, I want it to blend in softly. So usually if a base color, if a home is just painted one color, and I'm painting a mural on top of that, I won't use any white. I'll just use that background color, and you'll still get vibrancy without it looking out of place. Then it blends much more appropriately. Another really high requested mural piece is children's murals, and I have a strong connection with that. That's really what got me into this whole mural painting as a career, is just the connection with the parents and the child. Once I presented the finished mural in their room, it's kind of addicting to see that connection, and the smiles on the kid's face, on the parent's face. Really, I've done a lot of sophisticated murals like that in kids' rooms and in nurseries even. I'll try to create them so they're more mature and the child can grow into it. But it's fun when there's an older kid and we can do like a shark mural busting through the wall, a pirate ship battle, and that's what really gets them excited. Especially boys, they get really excited, and you suddenly become the coolest parents in the world. Somebody wants in. So let's say that this is your bathroom color of your bathroom. Just a really soft, subtle blue. And oh, somebody needs to come in. Wow. Okay, so subtle cells. And in the case of decorating, you might want to have just a touch of something special. So for murals, I have a handout over here if you want to pick one up. It describes where and when and why you might want to apply faux finishes or a mural in your home. And there are several reasons that I like to suggest that a mural is appropriate in your home. For one, as an intention, or a New Year's resolution. If you've made a New Year's resolution to improve yourself in one way or another, improve your life, or welcome more of something into your life, that can be represented in a mural of something symbolic. So for instance, peace. A dove represents peace. So we might incorporate really subtle an artistic graphic style of mural that fits with your colors, fits with your home. It's very tasteful. It doesn't look like it's overdone, but it's just something that's very subtle and is there to remind you of what your intention is. It creates an energy, and you're reminded every day if you have a symbol painted on your wall of your intentions. So that's just one idea, and then I have several other ones listed there. So I'm just going to take that idea and paint it in a tree mural here, very subtle, tone on tone. And it's going to be a two-step process because I want to then fade it back and soften it even further. So what I have here is just a real soft background color, and the color that I'm going to choose on top of it is just slightly lighter, and that's actually going to dry a little bit darker. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this tree here and let it dry, and then I'm going to come back and do a soft glaze over it, and this is going to fade it back even further and make it very soft. And then it's just, you can picture how it could be a really soft, appropriate reminder of your intention. I always just use house paints. Eggshell sheen. It's low VOC, which means it doesn't have a heavy odor. Volatile organic compounds is what VOC stands for, which sounds scary, but nowadays hardly any house paints have any. They're very, very low volatile organic compounds. So they're always very safe, and in children's rooms I get asked that if I'm using safe paints. So all house paints are going to be safe, interior especially. Oil-based paints aren't used often at all anymore. They're used for trim work and doors mostly, and that's just because an oil-based paint dries much harder. The latex, you can actually sink your thumbnail into it, and it is kind of soft. But an oil-based paint dries to a hard shell, and in outside situations, that can crack. So in outside situations, most often it's also water-based paint. So you'll only see oil-based paints used in interior trim and doors where it gets a lot of wear, and it can be cleaned easily without wearing down. It dries to a really hard shell. And I don't use oil paints in my murals or in my decorative work. The products that they're coming out with these days are very smooth, and they flow really nicely, and that's the appeal of oil paints for some finishers who like to work on a surface and have it be very smooth, such as this one. This is very smooth. When I put down a patch of color and then another patch of color and blend them together, when you see bad faux, then the two patches have a dark line between them. And the oil-based products that come out today stay soft for a longer time, so I can blend that together with no seam at all on a very large wall. So the next appeal that came along for oil paints was in faux finishing, to achieve that look and have more time to work on the wall and blend it out so that it looks soft. But really it's all in technique, and I can use just straight house paints and get that same soft finish by just manipulating the paint with water and working very fast, because water actually will make the paint dry faster. So I'm going to do just a very simple tree here, and I'll also do a little hill that it's sitting on, just for fun. Happy little hill. And this again is going to be just step one. I'll put another layer over this, and as soft as this already is, it's going to soften it a little bit more. Because, again, subtle sells in today's world. The faux sponging of the 90s are hopefully long gone. If you have any of that left over, please take a card and give me a call. I can help you. It's a nice soft little hill that that's sitting on. So these are really nice theme accents in bathrooms and bedrooms, accent walls. I did one recently in a narrow stairwell because the client wanted a family tree, and so the stairwell was very long and odd shaped. You walk up the stairs, and so I had the tree growing up with the stairs, starting with a very thick trunk at the base. And so then they were able to hang the paintings on the various branches. And that's really popular, again, for kids' rooms too. Parents wanting to decorate with little ornaments, the kids' initials, teddy bears, various things like that. So in a large room, if I'm doing a tree mural from floor to ceiling. Proportions are always important in this, even when I'm doing patterning. So I want to make sure that the balance and the composition of all these little open spots and dark spots are organic and random on the wall, so it looks natural. Because when it comes down to it, it is all supposed to be an organic finish and look natural, even though if it's not supposed to look like something else. If it's just a decorative finish, it should still look natural and not intentional. That's the difference between seeing something that was done by a do-it-yourselfer and someone who's experienced in doing what the finish is supposed to be. I put one that curves that way. I'll add a little bit of leaves in there. So a full room or a full wall with a tree mural like this might take about 4 hours to complete because of the size. And if I'm doing a dark color over light color, I'll have to go over it twice. So pricing is something that a lot of people are really curious about. And as you might imagine, it depends. It really depends on what the size of the work is and what the detail is. This is very simple, so it's going to be a much less expensive product. This piece sitting here is much more detailed, much more involved, takes more time, and it takes more experience to get to the point that you can paint a scene like that. There's an old story about Picasso painting in the park, and a woman comes up to him and says, "The great Picasso, will you paint my portrait?" He's like, "Sure, have a seat." So with one single line, he paints a perfect rendering of her in about 5 minutes. And she's like, "That's amazing, it's a perfect likeness, how did you do that?" And she goes, "What do I owe you?" He's like, "It's $3,500. She goes, "But it only took you 5 minutes, how can it be that much?" He goes, "No, you don't understand, it took a lifetime." And that's the experience that you pay for when you're hiring a seasoned contractor or artist to do your work. I always think about that because it's so true. Okay, that's enough branches. Let's get some leaves up there. These are just going to start in bushels. And just like with any faux finish that's got multiple layers, it takes a little bit of time to start to see it come to life and start to see it shape up. So the first few layers of a faux finish usually freak people out because I might want to have an underlying color of green and red, even though the final look is supposed to be brown. So if I start painting green and red on the wall, it just doesn't make sense. But when you see it all complete, for example, back my big canvas, back. Let that calm down. Underneath this brown leather faux finished board are some greens and reds. when the first layer, or actually the second layer, goes down for this finish, it looks like Neapolitan ice cream. So take away the brown here, and you just see the subtle bruising of green and red under there. Well, that's bright pink and lime green before that last layer of brown brings it all together. And it just adds depth and natural tones. I call it bruising. But when you see that second step with those crazy colors, it doesn't really make sense unless you know where it's going and why the next layer is going to complete the picture. So here I'm just blocking in some shapes, and they look kind of sloppy right now. But that's where the bunches of leaves group together. Take a smaller brush and then add a little more detail. This whole layer that I'm doing now, if I'm doing it in full color, I'm going to do it 2 or 3 times to get that depth of the leaves and the shadows and the highlights. So mural painting really is also a faux finish in itself, because as you can see, I'm not sitting here drawing the outline of each leaf. It's just a faux rendition of the leaf. Your eye sees it as shapes of the leaf, but it's not really a true leaf shape, so it's a faux. And mural painting is meant to be viewed from a distance, so you're not going to have the super tight paint strokes on a very large mural. The smaller you get in a mural like this one, then you can get a lot tighter with the paint strokes, because it'll be viewed from up close. But if I'm doing a large 10-foot by 8-foot mural, it's not going to be viewed in one area up close. It's going to be viewed as a full final piece at a distance. And so all the brush strokes make sense when you see it at a distance like that. It's impressionistic painting. So mural painting is going to have that. And that's why you'll get a similar price in a mural that's 10 by 10 as you will in a fine art piece, because of the implied brush strokes. The artist isn't taking the time to paint every single little piece of bark and every little vein in the leaf. It's just supposed to be implied. And when you see it at a distance, it just works. It just makes sense. And I think that's the beauty of it. In a room, it creates atmosphere. And one of the really strong purposes of having a mural. So this is going to be a theme mural as an intention to remind you of whatever it is you assign this image to. And so, let's create something here for this intention. Let's just say this is just to remind us to live. Something simple like that. All right, so this is going to dry, and I'm going to do another layer over it, so it's just a little bit softer than that even. And in the meantime, this can be a different type of base for a mural if you really want to have a rustic, aged effect. So this is a rough texture, and what I would do on this is paint a mural in the soft, faded, old world colors and then scrape it and bing it up and then do a glaze over it so it looks like it was gathering dirt over time and peeled off the wall over time. I could also use that to do a very vibrant mural, which I do have a sample of. There I did have a sample of. Alright, I don't have a sample of. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make one then. Well, that one's drying over there. I'll put the second layer on that one. So I'll do a different type of tree this time. So we're going to do one in color. A lot of moisture to get this a little more transparent. So with this, I don't have a reference, I'm just creating as I go. I've done a lot of trees, so I'm just going to go for it. And I kind of want it to be a leaning tree. This one's going to get dinged up, and I'm going to age this one, so I'm not going to be too particular about the details on this. But I do like the aspects of the twisting branches. And this is, again, kind of another faux technique because I'm not doing full detail. And in this, I'm also not going to use any white. I do have a color that's similar to the background here. And that's what I'll use as the white if I need to. But in this case, just keeping it watery is going to be enough white, leaving open spaces. But that's the white I use, it's kind of the same background color. So this tree's a little bit more stylized, a little more maybe fantasy style. Some more branches going this way. Again, I'm not being particular about these branches because I'm going to scrape the heck out of it and age it. And these strokes are just basically implications of the branches. These are going to get mostly covered up as well. But I could do some small details in the branches and let those show through. Also, don't use black when doing aged murals or subtle murals. I'll combine blue and brown, or green and brown. So I've got green, dark green, and brown here, and that's going to be about as dark as that gets for the black. Shadow. put this guy here because this was going to be a very rough demo. I just wanted you to see it. This isn't all you get. Just implying some things here. And I think I want to also add a hint of a sky in there too. Use that same blue I was using before because it's nice and washed out. This roughness is going to be part of the charm of this sample here. As I beat it up even further. Normally I would do the background first, but in this case this works just fine. And again, it's just an old, rough, aged image of a tree, so I'm getting that effect here by the way I'm painting it. Alright, so I'm going to do some leaves with shadows up there. Not quite full green because it's faded. It fades to a little bit of a brown green over time. So add a little bit of orange color. These are the background leaves. So they're going to be in the background and covered up by the foreground leaves. Let me get this going here. And this plaster that I'm working on is really nice for using the texture as part of the mural and getting that kind of watercolor feel, which is going to be, again, scraped off. I like that orange in there. There's a bit more of that. So again, it's a process. It doesn't look like it's going to work at this point, but it's going to. All right, I'll go a little bit lighter for another layer. Shape the tree a little bit. What's going to make this work and come together is the distressing at the end. So this would not be a finished tree by any means. It's the actual aging that makes it a finished piece. And this is where the client comes in and freaks out and says, "What is that mess?" Trees are probably my favorite murals to paint, just because of their many meanings. I love painting meaningful murals. I'm not really worried about this being very rough at this stage because it's supposed to be. All right, I'm looking forward to beating that up. In the meantime, while that dries, this one is ready to be softened a little bit. So I'm going to show you a glazing technique that is the glazing technique that the pros use. Doesn't always have to do with the product, but good product helps. So what I have here is just a little bit of textured plaster mixed into a little bit of a lighter color. I'm just going to give it that soft, powdery effect, which is actually a faux effect of a lime wall where the powder of the lime is leaching out of the wall over time. You see that in concrete. Application of the glaze and then the softening of the glaze. That's exactly how that other soft glaze board was done. So on this little board, I'm using smaller strokes because it's a small area. But on the larger wall, I use a bigger brush, bigger strokes, and you get a bigger pattern, which is appropriate on a larger wall. And that soft, powdery effect starts to come through it. And then pushing around all the little particles so they overlap and start to show up. It's a little form of manipulation. So that's that. I just softened it a little bit. Very, very soft and subtle, delicate. But it doesn't have a masculine or feminine quality. It just is a very peaceful, soft finish. So I consider that as part of your goal, if that's what you wanted in your home. I'm going to take a jump on this one and try to see if he's ready. And get my spatula.
Ladies and gentlemen, coming up on the Viking main stage in 10 minutes, it's the Viking cooking demonstrations, starting in 10 minutes on the Viking main stage.
Anyone that attends this seminar on the stage is eligible for a $20 gift certificate.
Normally I'd have a bigger spatula. Cover more ground here. But the idea is actually to just make it an old, worn image of what it once was. And I can even take out some of that plaster as if it peeled off the wall over time. So where would this be appropriate? Well, if it were a Tuscan scene, if I had done a Tuscan landscape like that, it's appropriate for a wine cellar, just to give that old world feel. without being too intricate, because in a wine cellar you have a lot of room to sit there and gaze, is just for atmosphere and theme. So another style of doing murals that doesn't require complete detail, but it does require skill and knowledge of how to get the effect. So very beat up and old on purpose. Like it's old plaster that's just broken off the wall. This is one of our techniques of doing that. There's a second step too, to add a dirt layer. Which is again a glaze, just a transparent color. So you still see what's underneath. I'm going to wet this first. The image was still a little bit wet, so it's going to blur a little bit. And it might even disappear. Drying is very important. So now this gets into a 500-year-old aged mural, but that's typically what you see in fresco art. That's why they have huge restoration projects to get that image back. But when you have just a hint of what was once an image, that's actually part of the charm, especially in something like a wine cellar that's representing your affinity to old world Italy and the ancient walls and ancient fresco paintings that have just been devoured by time. Thank you.